Hi there, I'm Vincent Bos and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing avoid the text of death when getting your ex back. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing avoid the text of death when getting your ex back. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will hopefully get to the point of texting them again. It's unlikely to be a good idea to message first, but whether you do or whether you don't and you're actually responding to them, it's very important that you're hot on your text game. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 types of text to avoid when trying to get your ex back. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is the desperate plea. So the desperate plea, just as all of the text examples that I'm going to be giving you today, could be considered within an almost infinite amount of possibilities. So I'm going to give you an example for each of these upcoming texts, and obviously just use your common sense to link things which could be deemed very similar. Okay, so first of all, we're speaking about the desperate plea. And the example I'm going to give for this is something such as, please, just talk to me. I can't live without you. Now, if you're to send something like this, there is a few reasons why you're going to be getting yourself into some trouble. And if we're going to consider why you need to be avoiding this, and remember, you shouldn't really be sending a message out first anyway, so whether you've decided to ignore that advice and do it anyway, or perhaps you've actually received a text from your ex first, and now you are responding. If you put something such as, please, just talk to me, I can't live without you. The reason why I would avoid this is because the text puts a lot of emotional pressure on your ex. Okay, it really hammers home the pressure, and in some regards it is an ultimatum, and ultimatums never go well. If you give somebody an ultimatum, the likelihood is it's not going to go the way that you hope. Additionally, it comes across as needy and desperate, which is going to make your ex feel not only overwhelmed or potentially guilty, but certainly not closer to you in the way that you want them to feel. At the time of a breakup, your ex-dumper is feeling a very low level of romantic emotional attraction for you. And the only reason that they would start to reconsider their decision is if that level of attraction has risen to a necessary high point. Now, if you are coming across as desperate and needy, if you're almost giving them an ultimatum by saying, please, just talk to me, I can't live without you, I don't know what I'm going to do, that type of thing, it's not going to make them see you in a romantic way. Now, there is a chance they might feel pity towards you, they might feel concern, they might feel worry, and perhaps you might even hear from them. Maybe you will actually get them knocking on your door, asking if you're okay. But that isn't what you want. You want a romantic relationship with your former partner. You don't want them being worried about you. You don't want them calling people up and saying, hey, I'm really worried about my dumpee. We best contact the authorities. I'm really nervous about what they're going to do next. You don't want that. Even if you think, well, my dumper is giving me attention again. It's not the type of attention that you crave. You want your ex back. You need to reattract them by growing romantic emotional attraction in their mind. You don't want to be scaring them, worrying them, demanding on them, or making them feel pressured. You don't want to come across as needy or desperate. Doing these things is not going to regrow romantic emotional attraction in their mind towards you. If anything, it's going to diminish further. So as I said, please don't mix up the potential extra attention you're getting from your ex for actual romantic emotional attraction. If you send out a desperate plea text, similar or somewhat similar to the example I've just given, your ex-dumper is likely to only give you attention from a place of worry, certainly not from a place of romance, intrigue, desire. They're not going to want you back in a relationship, but just want to check you're okay, and if and when they find out how you're doing, they're going to be asking for others to keep an eye on you whilst they run away even further than they are right now. So the desperate plea text is certainly something you need to avoid, and definitely something I would refer to, as within today's podcast, as a text of death. Avoid the text of death, because if you don't, it's the death of you reconnecting with your dumper. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube, and if you have the new hype feature, please hype this video as well. If you like my content, subscribe to the channel to keep updated. And point number 2 is the long apology novel. Now, the long apology novel is something which, as a dumpee, you could easily fall into. If you've been dumped, you're automatically going to be thinking that you've done something wrong. Now, I don't know, just from doing this generalized podcast, every single situation that everybody listening is in. And there are likely to be some of you who definitely do owe your ex-dumper an apology. It's not like all dumpees are completely innocent as for why the breakup took place. But you've got to look at your own specific situation. If me and you were to speak via my audio coaching service, this is something that we would delve into and try to establish, do you have anything to apologise for? Yes or no? Some of you will, some of you won't. But what I can certainly say is that none of you should be going into the long apology novel text. This is definitely another text of death. It's definitely going to be something which kills off the chance of reconnecting with your ex, rather than regrown romantic emotional attraction. Now, let's just give an example of what the long apology novel text could be. I mean, I'm not going to make it quite as long as I'm sure some of you may have considered or maybe actually done, but you will get the idea. So the example I'm going to give is, I know I messed up in so many ways, and I regret everything. I was wrong for, and then there could be a whole list of reasons as to why this text gets longer and longer and longer. And I've been so miserable without you. Now this, again, I've just shortened what could have been a very, very long text there. You might think, well, if I've done something wrong, then what's the problem? But the bit that I skimmed over there, the list the reasons bit, remember, let's just go through that again. I know I messed up in so many ways, and I regret everything. I was wrong for, and then you got that list of reasons. If you actually put a text like that, well, it's not going to be having the effect that you're likely desiring. You're sending this message out because you're desperate to try and sort things. Maybe you've received a text from your dumper, you never saw it coming, and you thought, oh gosh, they've actually messaged me. I want to apologise for everything. Now, like I said a little earlier, if you have done something wrong, then maybe you do need to apologise. But what I would say is that if you have already apologised, you don't need to be doing it again. Maybe at most one more time. Maybe at the time of a breakup you apologise for something major. I don't know, for instance, maybe you cheated on your partner and they dumped you, and at the time of a breakup you apologise. Then months later, your ex-dumper contacts you again and you want to say sorry once more for what you did to break up the relationship. Now, if you want to do it like that, maybe there's a way where you could fit that in. But I would be very careful of doing it, especially if and when your ex-dumper has just contacted you. If they haven't contacted you and you're thinking of just sending it again, I would be very wary of that. You just need to apologise for once, maybe twice in some instances. Use your common sense. But you don't need to be doing it again and again and again. Actions speak louder than words. Yes, apologise, but you've got to be showcasing yourself if you get the opportunity to prove that you are an improved person in every single way. Now, the list of reasons that you might give in the long apology novel text might include things that you have no reason to apologise for. I've just said a moment ago, maybe you cheated on your former partner. That is why you're apologising. Okay, well, that's an obvious one, but don't start to think of every single thing you ever did, but you're now thinking to yourself, is a problem and something that you need to apologise for. Sometimes dumpees will think of almost silly reasons to apologise just because they think it will give them extra points in their ex-dumper's mind, but it won't. It will actually have the opposite effect, because while accountability is important, a lengthy, overly emotional apology message might actually seem like you're dwelling in the past. And you've got to bear in mind, if your ex-dumper has reached out to you, they're missing you to some degree. It's very unlikely indeed that you messaging them first is going to be a good idea, so let's just park that to one side and consider your dumper has reached out to you. So if they've done that, they've already got to the point where they're thinking about you in a positive light to reach out. If they've done that, you don't need to be dwelling on the past, bringing all of that negativity back up, because maybe it's not in the front of their mind. Maybe you are actually reminding them of things that they don't need to be thinking about right now. So consider that if and when you receive that text. And this can actually make it harder for your ex to think about a fresh start, because maybe they've reached out to you in a positive frame of mind. You've written a really long apology text listing all of these things which actually make you seem like not a very good option to date and be in a relationship with. And they're thinking, gosh, I forgot about all of those things. And most of them aren't even necessary. But you're just listing them, you're making yourself seem bad, you're lowering your value, you're not making yourself an attractive option. So even though the apology text comes from a good place, it comes from taking accountability, that is important. Remember, you've got to use your common sense. If there's something to apologise for, do it. But generally only the once. And if you've already done it, there's not really a reason to need to do it again. Maybe very serious things you could perhaps do once more. But certainly don't start listing all of the things which are unnecessary just to try and get those extra points in your ex-bedumper's mind, but it's going to have the adverse effect. In fact, your ex-bedumper is instead going to be seeing you as a lower value individual and probably regretting sending you a text in the first place. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the build-up of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast. If you feel that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description. And point number 3 is the awkward, obvious memory bait. So this is something that dumpees might think they're trying to be clever using as a way to regrow romantic emotional attraction. And the fact is, that what I'm about to say, if done correctly, can increase your chance of getting your ex back. But unfortunately, lots of people don't do it correctly. And if you're not going to do it right, then sadly, you're doing it wrong. And if you're doing it wrong, it's not going to help you. In fact, it's going to push your dumper further away. So an example of the awkward, obvious memory bait text would be something such as, hey, remember when we used to stay up all night talking? I miss that so much. Now that might sound a lovely message. You might be thinking, well, not only does it sound really nice, but it is planting a positive seed in my dumper's mind, reminding them of times where we had these great conversations. And this is going to regrow attraction, so then they will want to get back with me. Unfortunately, this is really obvious. And because it's really obvious, it becomes really awkward. And when it is awkward and obvious, instead of re-attracting your ex, it's just showing you as playing a game. Nobody wants to think that someone they're talking to is playing a game. Now, even though you might be thinking, well, I'm listening for strategies of how to try to get an ex back. Yes, you are, but the main strategy is not to be caught using a strategy. And additional to that, most of the time, the strategies involve you just being yourself and making sure you promote yourself in the best way. So, although this is something which you might say is a very fine line, it is really, really important that you stay the correct side of a line. Because if you don't, this is going to go wrong. Let's go over that example quickly once more. Hey, remember when we used to stay up all night talking? I miss that so much. It just sounds cheesy. It doesn't sound authentic. It sounds like you're playing a game. It sounds like you're trying to drop these hints, and that is not going to help you. Now, yes, if you can get your ex-bedumper to reminisce about you in a genuine way where they can't tell that is what you're trying to do, then that can be positive. But if you are doing it in an obvious way, if you're doing it too soon potentially, or too frequently, then this might actually make your ex-bedumper feel pressured, or that you're trying to guilt them into coming back. That's not going to work. Now, when I said a moment ago, if you're doing it too soon, The example of that would be your ex contacts you for the first time in 9 months, and instead of you just going with the flow for a little bit, you instantly try to drop a memory in there for them to think about. Okay, that is too soon. You've got to make it more authentic and more genuine. If you were doing it in every text you're sending, that would be too frequently. And you shouldn't be using the idea I've just said in that text either in any way, because that is where it's too obvious and not going to help. Depending on your unique specific situation is going to dictate exactly how you might be able to use a technique of dropping memory hints to get them to regrow attraction, but it will depend on the specifics of you and your ex, and it certainly needs to be very subtle, and it certainly needs to be used at the right time. Again, this is something we could potentially speak about via my audio coaching service if you think it could help you. Ultimately, you need to remember to avoid any of these texts of death if you want to try and reconnect with your ex, because if you use one of the examples I've given today, unfortunately, instead of getting your ex back, you're likely to be making them run further away.